There's a lot of good and bad that comes with getting sentenced to federal prison. In my case, it felt very good to get clarity. The bad was shortly before sentencing, I felt like the weight of all of my bad decisions over the 3 years had caught up with me, kind of like spending on a credit card and the bill is due. I had put on a lot of weight. In fact, like 6 weeks before my sentencing hearing, I had actually bought a brand new suit. It was already too tight. And literally, while getting sentenced, the button popped. It was terrible. It was embarrassing. And I wondered if I could have it taken in. I wasn't in the right frame of mind. Yet, when I heard the 18 months, as hard as it was to hear, I was grateful that I had clarity. The sentencing was measurably easier than the guilty plea, which leads, I presume, to how Charlie Javice, if I said that correctly, is feeling right now. It was a massive win that she got 85 months or 7 years in prison. Massive win. I'm going to talk about that in this live video. One take, let's roll, and offer some insights on how she can prove worthy of this really reduced sentence and share some insights from a conversation I had with a journalist who wanted to know, what are your thoughts on this sympathetic judge? Is this not an injustice that she got such a shorter sentence? So early this morning, I wrote what I like to do. I wrote a blog about this experience. I also filmed a podcast quickly for some summary. We know that she was convicted at trial, sentenced to 85 months in prison for her role in defrauding JPMorgan Chase in this $175 million franc acquisition. She sold it. She worked there for a year. She got fired, indicted, went to trial, lost. Most people lose. And here's, I think, the first big breakdown that her lawyers made, in my opinion. I think it's a mistake when you're convicted at trial and the losses is $200 million to ask for 18 months in a minimum security camp. I don't think it's serious. I don't think it's realistic. And I think it's insulting to people who actually plead guilty, some people who cooperate, pay back all of the money. They still may get 18, 24 months or 3 years. So I think even though it was a massive gift, as crazy as that sounds, to get 7 years in prison, doesn't sound like a gift, but it was. I'll discuss why in a moment. Even though it was a massive win, I think it was a missed opportunity to ask for 18 months. And I actually think she could have got a shorter sentence if it was more realistic, 3 years. Now, on the flip side, what do we talk about here? White Collar Advice. By the way, welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm thankful that you're here every Monday and Wednesday. We're going to get back to producing content, mostly live, because I do one take. Let's do it. I think the government made a big mistake in asking for 12 years. Something we encourage all of you to do if you're traversing a government investigation. Put yourself in the shoes of a stakeholder. What does a prosecutor want? They want to advance their career. They want to look good on television, run for office, say it's about justice and the victims. Many of you I know are enamored by your lawyer who might be a former U.S. attorney. And in my opinion, they still think like a former U.S. attorney because they don't fight aggressively enough for their clients. They tend to be, as I like to say, an order taker. Still, too many U.S. attorneys ask for sentences that are far too long. And I think asking for 12 months in this case was ridiculous. I think that lengthy request hurt her in front of this judge that I am familiar with. So you got the government asking for 12 years. You got her lawyers foolishly asking for 18 months. The judge did her a solid, a favor, a gift in giving her 85 months. The question is, will she prove worthy of it? The responsibility that comes with that gift. And I'm going to touch on that as we get back to this. Let's blog a little bit. Let's talk. So we know that Judge Hellerstein said to her crimes, that's a hard crime. That's a hard word. Her crimes required a great deal of duplicity, I wrote. But also said that she was a good person who had done good deeds. Then he told her, I don't think you will be committing any crimes, and I think you will be devoting your life to service, but others need to be deterred. I'll touch on deterrence in this video, but that is a win for her. I want you to know, whenever you hear a judge mention the deterrence component, that means he doesn't think you are ever going back to prison. Therefore, the only reason you are getting sentenced to prison is the deterrence component. It also tells me, had she accepted responsibility, she probably gets 2 or 3 years. Instead, she's convicted. She's going to appeal. She kind of says she's sorry. You got to pick one lane. There's no doubt. Has she simply said, I should not have gone to trial. I accept full responsibility for my conduct. I am not going to appeal. She maybe gets 4 years. Instead, she's trying to have it both ways. I made some mistakes. It's not criminal. I'm still appealing. Give me 18 months. Not plausible. Doesn't make any sense. But you know, if you're at a sentencing hearing, that's like a takeaway for you. If you hear a judge talk about good deeds, essentially referencing in the totality of your life, as short as her life is, you've done good things. That tells me you ain't getting 12 months in jail. That was a huge win for her. And the judge continued giving her these wins, which leads to a journalist asking me, can you believe this sympathetic judge, gave her 7 years? The feds wanted 12. I'm like, well, is 7 years not enough? Do we really need to warehouse this woman who I have great sympathy for? She has a wonderful family. I have no doubt she did not begin this endeavor with bad intentions. 100% clear on that. Great deal of sympathy for her and her family. But is it really sympathy when you got 85 months in prison? But let's work under the presumption it's a sympathetic judge. She then said, well, what do you suggest? Well, here's what I would suggest for her. There are dangers of getting a shorter sentence from a sympathetic judge in a really high profile case. Why? Everyone is watching. I attended a sentencing hearing about a month ago for Matthew Boyer, the bookmaker in the Shohei Ohtani case, very close friend. He's going to prison on the 10th. And the government asked for a longer sentence because of the notoriety around it. Make an example of him, Your Honor. Everyone's watching, Your Honor. That's a lot of responsibility for Judge Holcomb, who still gave him a shorter sentence. Probation wanted 3 years. He got a year and a day. My point is, if she got this sympathetic judge to give her a shorter sentence, she is now, as I wrote, under the microscope. If she goes and does a little bit of the Elizabeth Holmes, a little bit too much complaining, I have sympathy for her as well. It's a long sentence with a young family. But if there's a little bit of complaining, it's not fair, the bunk isn't nice, then it's going to be like, you didn't prove worthy of the request. You're taking advantage of it. All eyes will be on her. And if she doesn't do well, if she gets into trouble, if she complains, if she doesn't use the time strategically to show, as a judge said to us on YouTube, how she's part of the solution, that could compel the same judge to next time say, you know what? I gave her a gift. She didn't prove worthy of it. I'm not going to give the same gift to this person. These people don't appreciate it. All eyes are on her. And I would tell her, if she's watching, if her family's watching, you have a massive, massive opportunity to demonstrate for Judge Hellerstein, for other judges who these sentences are far too long. This is a great opportunity for you to say, I'm going to prove worthy of it. I'm going to keep you apprised of my progress. I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to be a law-abiding, contributing citizen. I absolutely am going to do that, Your Honor. I am so grateful. In this blog, I touched on already, and I've covered it, this appeal contradiction. I think that cost her. I think she either should have said, I'm not going to appeal, or I am going to appeal. But it's clear that the government said to her, the judge said, she doesn't admit she committed a crime. I don't think it's an acceptance of responsibility. She said she made a mistake. I also touched on, before I get to more important matters, this idea of cost of winning the right way. I don't like some of the messaging from her lawyers inside of this sentencing. And I'm going to share why as we talk about how she can prove worthy of an earlier release from prison. Because when she gets to prison, if anyone goes to prison, when I went to prison, the only question is, how the hell can I get out of here? Now, in my case, hold on, this might be a prison reform rant before I get back to the blog. In my case, there was no mechanism to advance my release date. I went in 2008. Second Chance Act had just passed. Very few people were benefiting from it. The First Step Act that was passed 10 years later didn't exist. There was no mechanism to advance my release date. On 18 months, I was going to get good time, get 90 days in the halfway house, go to the halfway house, home confinement. That's a wrap. Thank you for calling. Well, there are myriad opportunities that exist now to advance her release date, thanks in part to the work that my friend Michael does through Prison Professors Charitable Corporation, where right now he's in a prison in Leavenworth, in the Danbury, in Otisville, in Victorville, 50 prisons across the country implementing our programs, and also working with the Bureau of Prisons to implement more policy. Changes are coming in this administration, which means it is in her interest more than ever to build a record that shows how she will be law-abiding in prison, how will she be productive, programming that she participates in, what she is learning from the programming, and building this online library that she could share with stakeholders, like a judge, with a case manager, with her parents, who I have no doubt are absolutely devastated with the fact that their daughter's going to prison for 85 months, no different from when my parents were devastated that their student athlete from USC, the baseball player, the executive, was going to prison. That person being me, by the way. I know it's harder on them. And the way that you overcome it isn't by, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. I'm ashamed I can never have a productive or fulfilling life, which is what too many people presume, but rather by saying, hold me accountable. Here's what I'm going to create. Here's how I'm going to build. The problem when people go to prison, they do the bare minimum and they think they're going to get the result they want. I'm going to avoid the iPhones and engage in programming, and suddenly you're going to get like a year of home confinement or halfway house. They're just going to send you home. That's what most people do. How can she stand out, prove worthy of the shorter sentence from this judge who she may want liberty from in the future? She may want a resentencing under the First Step Act. It's allowed. It's happened to people in our community, not just by asking, hey, I've been here for a year. I've avoided the iPhones. Yeah, no iPhones for me. Yeah, a lot of iPhones, not me though. I'm doing great. I go to programming. It's fantastic. Do yoga. It's awesome. What? Yeah. I've helped 3 people write their resume. No, it's not documented anywhere at all, but I've done great. Would you resentence me to 2 years? I'm ready to get home and rebuild my life. That's what some people do. You know what judges do? They throw it in the trash. If she submitted that, that would not be proving worthy of the recommendation. She would be stronger if she's going to be productive in prison, if she documents, if she builds, if she creates, if she influences and teaches in a productive, scalable, measurable way. Share that update with Judge Hellerstein before she actually asks for anything. People don't do that, however. You want to know why? Because it actually requires following through and implementing the plan. We all know what to do. Not everyone does it, including me at days. We're all human. I'm simply trying to convey to you mechanisms exist for her to get more of what she wants: an earlier release, more liberty on the other side, pardon, clemency, all of these things are on the table. It all kind of stems from what she does next. She needs to be creating in a really deliberate, methodical manner, which is what my partner did through 26 years in prison, but there was no mechanism to advance his release date. Thankfully for him, the work that he did is now put him in front of the BOP to advocate for policies that will help absolutely all of you. Let's get back to this cost of winning the right way, something that could be off-putting to a case manager and something that could hurt her in the eyes of staff. And this is a strategy they pursued. It didn't work. It never works. It was bad messaging, flawed. I can assure you she probably didn't agree with it, but how would she know any better? It's the only time she'll traverse this wretched system. Her lawyers, in asking for 18 months, argued, this is terrible, argued that JPMorgan really wasn't a victim because it's such a small amount compared to its capitalization. Look, that is a losing argument. I am no fan of JPMorgan. They fire, next to Bank of America, they fire people with a felony conviction. It is so quick. It is so fast. I do love when Jamie Dimon from JPMorgan wrote an op-ed in the New York Times stating that more people who have gone to prison should have second chances. Sure. How about letting us bank with you, my man? No. All platitudes, good for PR, window dressing. But in reality, you have a bank account there. They fire you. Still, it doesn't excuse that you cannot justify her getting 18 months because the bank that you stole from is $1 trillion company and $175 million is a rounding error. I've been to 50 PPP sentencing since COVID, 50. And I always know a sentence is going to go measurably higher when the defense attorney or defendant might not say it directly, but they insinuate, Your Honor, 50,000, 80,000, 200,000 relative to the size of the treasury. And I hear that and I say, stop, please. Somebody needs to get like the Gong Show on 50. Remember the Gong Show? They yank the dude off stage. Somebody's got to get him out of there. And the judge will say, you stole from the government. You bilked the government during a crisis. I don't care if it's $25,000 or $500,000. There's consequences that follow. And to justify the stealing under the idea the government squanders more money than that, it doesn't work with this guy for Judge Carter and Judge Seln to say that. So when her lawyers argued that the loss relative to the total market cap was nothing, that is a flawed argument. And as I recall, if I wrote in the blog correctly, I think the judge addresses that somewhere. Here's what he wrote. I got up like 4 a.m. to write this thing, people. A fraud remains a fraud, whether you outsmart someone who is smart or someone who is a fool. What does that mean? A fraud is a fraud. Certainly there are mitigating circumstances about the type of fraud. Had she defrauded elderly investors for $175 million, she'd have got 50 years in prison like Bernie Madoff. Certainly because this is a bank, it was a massive mitigating factor the government or the judge considered when giving this sentence. In sum, it didn't do a very good job of identifying with victims, and that is a problem. If you've pled guilty and there are victims, even if there's no perceptible victim, even if it's the United States of America, you say, I had an obligation to do better. There are consequences to my conduct. irrespective of the length of my sentence today, probation, 3 years or 5 years, there are consequences that follow for the rest of my life. I wish I'd have given more thought to my actions before I succumbed to pressures and seized opportunities that hurt people, even if that's my fellow citizen that I will never meet. Better messaging that would have helped her, but it will help her in prison. She's got to undo this idea that JPMorgan is not a victim, because you know what case managers care about? The victims in the judgment and commitment order in the probation report, which is going to say 175 million or so. So when she's advocating for an earlier release, is it plausible to think that a case manager who has seen a lot of people like her and me, is that grammatically correct, who have seen a lot of people like us come in, they may be thinking 100 and $200 million, you only got 7 years. That's kind of some privilege here. That's kind of not fair. Joey or Marissa or Alyssa or Molly down the hall got 10 years for a nonviolent drug crime through a life of violence and poverty she has had. She got 10 years because her husband or boyfriend was the organizer. He cooperated. They found her. She's in prison. Her 2 kids are at home. She got 10 years and you got 7 for 200 million. And you're in here after 3 weeks. And what? Is it realistic that they could think that way? So I would engage her to embrace better messaging as a result of conduct that I engaged in. And this will be easier for her once she loses the appeal, I presume, because most lose, but no, maybe. There are consequences that follow. People's lives are impacted because of me. And I understand I might have some opportunities and privilege that some people here have not had. I went to Wharton. I have loving, supporting parents. I was Fortune 30 under 30, which I'll talk about in a moment. I knew better messaging. Unfortunate reality is not enough people engage in that message. And while I'm sympathetic towards her and I want her to be productive, I want her to prove worthy of this shorter sentence. I want her to use this experience to impact millions of people who could benefit from her expertise and background. There is no doubt. Let's transition to a moment to this deterrence component. I'm not a buyer of the deterrence component. It doesn't work, but it's certainly something that judges frequently use in justifying a lengthier prison sentence. And as I wrote here, others need to be deterred, Judge Hellerstein said. Prosecutors argue in this case, judges repeat it too. It comes up a lot. I don't think Molly in Michigan is not going to break the law because she saw Charlie in this district get sentenced to prison. People break the law because they feel pressure. They rationalize some opportunity. They seize that opportunity, and in the moment, they don't think they're going to get caught. I assure you, they're most likely not thinking about other people. There could be more effective ways for her actually to detour, and I would encourage her to do that before she even goes to prison. I built my living when I came home from prison, speaking at business schools across the country, law enforcement, the FBI, Fortune 500 companies. I didn't have the wherewithal or the skill set or the levels of introspection to tell my story well before I went to prison, so I wouldn't have been a candidate for it. But the earlier she can begin to detour, she should, meaning she should go to a USC or Stanford or Wharton, her alma mater. Did I tell you I had an invitation to speak at Wharton when I was in Philly, but a professor canceled it because they didn't want to give a stage to the felon, which was ironic because they had 3 felons and 3 alum in prison at the time. Regardless, she could detour, and she should have done this even before sentencing, by helping business students understand the consequences of succumbing to temptation, the consequences of feeling pressure, of not thinking things through, of not thinking 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, the consequences that follow a government investigation for you, for your family, for your victims. I think she is in a position to do that. She should have. The earlier she can begin to do that, I think the better, because it's going to show that she is indeed focused on deterrence, and she should use her time in prison productively to develop a program, a training, an ethical module, something that can impact young leaders, thinkers, to make better decisions than she did. I know that public speaking upon my release helped me. I developed relationships, improved the way I think, speak, and communicate. But it also felt really good to provide value. And it took a long time, by the way, before I even got paid for it. I just wanted to see if I could help, which leads to her helping immediately, making it about others, not her. I think for a long time, it was just about her and the pressures that accompanied being, as I wrote, the Forbes under 30 blind spot, right? She's this 30 for 30 star. And I can tell you, that comes with enormous pressure. I was 26 at Bear Stearns, then I took $1 million to go to UBS at 27. There's a lot of pressure that accompanies it, and it clouds your thinking, and you make short-sighted decisions to your long-term detriment. And I have no doubt that happened here. I'm not saying Forbes compelled her to engage in fraud, but being profiled so early brings a level of urgency, thinking that you have arrived, and it could have compelled, I wrote, JPMorgan to rush their due diligence because they had a star they wanted to be associated with. If I was her, I would acknowledge this culture of being a young star fueled her to make, even if she doesn't want to accept responsibility, some mistakes. If I were her and I was her, I would encourage her to use her time in prison to write about it, to be vulnerable, to be open, to teach and to share lessons. A couple more here before I wrap up this live YouTube video. And it's getting very busy here. A few more minutes together, and I'm so thankful that you're here. She did turn in some excellent character reference letters, and it's clear that Judge Hellerstein commented on some of these letters, repeating that she was a good person who has done good deeds. Then he sentenced her to 7 years anyway. Here's the lesson. Character letters help, but they don't replace the work that you have to do as a defendant. She should certainly take those letters, edit them, and build them into a plan. Her release plan that she should share with a case manager, probation officer. She should also send it to Judge Hellerstein shortly after her surrender to prison. But that doesn't change that you cannot rely on other people to say why you were great and why you should come home early. Lawyers have no involvement in this process moving forward other than the appeal. It's on her to develop a record over a sustained period of time, to build it, to write it, to share the good, the bad, the vulnerable, lessons learned. Only she can do that. Other people can't write those letters on her behalf. So I like letters. Fine. People are going to say, you're great. You're awesome. We love you. You'll never do it again. What's most important is what you are doing. There are limits on letters at sentencing. There are limits on letters and trying to get out of prison early, which leads to my final thought, the prison teaching trap. You get on an airplane. Well, my brother-in-law is a pilot, and I'm like, hey, so what's the first thing you say when you get on the plane? Well, basically, if thing is going down, you put the mask on yourself first, then you put it on yourself. She needs to demonstrate that she can accept this, embrace the 85 months, recognize in the totality of her life it's a little blip, especially with good planning and prison reform. She could be home really quickly. I mean, someone in our community got 48 months. They were home in 14 months. They'll be on our webinar talking about it next week. It wasn't by accident. It was engineering. It was making decisions that help you today, but also making decisions that might help you 5 years from now. Embracing this transformational experience by getting vested with Prison Professors Charity, creating assets, influencing, helping millions of people. It's transformational, not transactional. No. I'm not a prison consultant. I don't want to be a prison consultant. I don't want to tell you how to prepare for prison. I don't want to do it. We give all of that away for free through our webinars and our programs. It's stupid. You don't need a prison consultant, many of whom have no expertise. They go to prison for 9 months, come home and fancy themselves a consultant. No, in the age of AI, the ability to create, you need a transformational experience. The nonprofit is a way to do that, to show that you're part of the solution. Now, she can do that. She could teach. Here's the problem. Some people want to put the mask on somebody else, you like the plane analogy, before they put it on themselves. They make very bold and very active with the hands today. I'm going to scale it back for a second. Is anyone watching this? Before they help themselves, they make these big blanket statements of how they're going to change the lives of millions of people. They're going to help everyone. They're going to teach. They're going to create. They're going to influence. They're going to influence reform. Well, have you done it? There is a trap that follows people who are very successful, who have made money, who have had opportunity, and have the ability to have an impact. That trap, as I wrote in this blog, is the prison trap. She needs to get to prison if she wants to have a productive experience and lay low, study, adjust, not feel compelled to walk the track with any woman, many of whom will have good intentions. She needs to understand what it is she's striving to do. And if that's to engineer a plan to get out of there, she's got to avoid problems. She's got to program. She's got to do her job. She's got to never complain, recognize every email is read, every phone call is recorded and can be listened to. She's got to study that environment before she seeks to influence it in both good and bad ways. But if it's a good way, she needs to take her time and settle in before she runs to education and say, I'm a Fortune 30 under 30, and I have expertise in finance and coaching. I went to Wharton. I'd like to teach a class here. She's got to lay low. Do not be too assumptive. Do not come off as arrogant. Other prisoners who have been there for weeks, months, and years could resent it. So I love it. I would love it if she would teach. I'd love it if she taught through Prison Professors Charitable Corporation that has programs in every BOP prison. We've created courses with Bill McGlashan, with Massimo Giannulli, Jerry Lundergan, real thought leaders, impact people. It didn't change. They understood their environment before they said, I'm going to influence millions of people. Her credibility in prison is important. She needs to get off to a good start, avoiding the infractions, doing her own programming, building a reputation as someone who is honest. And then that can transition into, hey, I want to teach. I want to contribute. I want to be a part of the solution. It should take some time. She's got to demonstrate. She's put the mask on herself first. She embraces it, and she's going to have a productive experience. And that's sort of how I will close this 25-minute live YouTube video. I have great sympathy for anyone traversing the criminal justice system and the white-collar crime world. I know it's the last place any of us ever imagined we would be. But we're here. I've written a new book every week. I'm sending a chapter for our newsletter. It's free, don't buy it. And the book is called After the Fall. And in that first chapter, I discuss, as I wrap up, a conversation I had with my friend Sam in prison, where I said to him, I'm turning down the halfway house. I'm not going home. And he's like, dude, are you crazy? All you ever wanted to do is avoid prison. Now you want to stay in prison longer? What's wrong with you? And I explained to him, without a wife and children, that I wanted to continue to build and learn, because I had met Michael Santos, my partner, who'd been in for 22 years. And he was helping me develop skills and knowledge, trying to understand how I got there and build a better future, what I could do moving forward. I ended up taking the halfway house. My point is, for her to have a productive journey, besides the obvious of avoiding programs and engaging in programming, she should be thinking about someone like Michael Milken, the junk bond king from the 80s, who lived not far from where I grew up in Encino. People don't even know that Michael Milken went to prison anymore. They look at him as the philanthropist, the person who builds the Milken schools, curing cancer, and others. Ask 10 people, do you know Michael Milken? They'll either say no. If they say yes, did you know he went to prison? Most say no. He engineered an outcome where he could use his experience as a tool to assist and help other people. And that's the challenge I'll give to her. 7 years can fly by. It can be incredibly productive if she uses the time to build in a way that shows it's not about her, but it's about the lives of these women who have not had opportunities she has had. If she can put herself in their shoes and think, what can I do to help them engineer the outcome that they want? Because in so doing, it will help me. So prisonprofessors.org, she should have a profile. It's free. She should be writing. It's free. She should be creating and sharing this with women in prison once it's time. And I'd love to use our scale at the nonprofit to help her reach more people in prison. But regardless of where she does it, if her goal is to get out of there as quickly as possible, it's in her interest to start immediately. So that's how I'll close. Great sympathy for her and her family. It doesn't have to define the rest of her life, as too many people think it does. If anything, it could turn out to be, don't call me crazy, it can be wonderful. It can be terrific. It can be such an asset. You can learn so many lessons. You can help so many people. It can be wonderful. I'm not spinning that it's not hard. It is hard, but you can find meaning through it. And insights I offered in this video, if she watches, will help, or if you're watching and going through the system, it will help you as well. Thank you for being in the White Collar Advice community. I will see you next Monday.